Hi everyone, welcome to the final tutorial of the course System Design with a User Perspective. Today we're going to maybe introduce a few extra JavaScript concepts and quickly have a look at Vue.js. This will be it's a way to simplify and make development a bit quicker and easier. It's not really a new programming language or anything. It's just a way to make programming a bit faster. So it's definitely not something you need to use, and it's definitely not something you need to use in the project either. So you don't need to use Vue.js. You can just use plain JavaScript. You can also just not use any other platforms you want. So that's another thing. We don't force you to use it. Also, today and on the lab website, we're we're talking about an older version of Vue.js, which uses a model called the options model. It's a bit old, and I would recommend using the composition model if you want, because it's much easier to use. So it's a much more modern way, and it was introduced with Vue.js 3.0. You have both models, the options model, which we will be discussing today because that's what's on the lab tutorial website. But I would recommend, if you want to look more, you could use the composition model because it's easier to use. But yeah, let's have a look now at. Let's start with the JavaScript concepts I want to talk about today. So I will share my virtual machine. Okay, so this is the website we had from last time. I did just one thing. I returned the server to the previous state, so we have the old server again, not the one that we modified. So the first thing I want to talk about today is the JavaScript ternary operator. It's a JavaScript language features, not very not like not something related to web development specifically, but it's actually present also in many other languages. So if you want to say x equals a question mark hi, for example, and what happens is, if a is true, then x will be equal to high. If a is false, then x will be equal to y. This is called a ternary operator. It's very useful. It's much quicker than writing an if statement. If a, x equals this, and if else. So yeah, this is a very useful feature in many languages, the ternary operator. So yeah, keep it in mind. It will make save you quite some time. Okay, so another thing I wanted to talk about is setting attributes. So if you have something like here in index, you have maybe like this input, or maybe actually let's look for a text box. So yeah, maybe you have an input type equals email ID, yeah, and placeholder is email. So what you could do is use something called set attribute. So document dot get element by ID. I'm sure you remember this. Dot set attribute. Now, what this set attribute does is allow you to modify the attributes of the HTML document. So in this case, if we want to modify the attribute placeholder equals email, we can just say set attribute placeholder and email. So yeah, it's just something that's helpful in some cases, so we can actually test it. So yeah, placeholder, and we actually want to change it not to email to something else. So yeah, you can use this, and when we press the button, it changes to something else. So yeah, it's because it's in the button click function, which we call in the event on click on our button. So that's why it actually executes now. Yeah, I also wanted to talk about, yeah, so there are actually different ways to modify events. So you can do get element by ID. You can directly do something like email dot on click equals, and then you can say equals function. You can just set it to an anonymous function, or you can make it equal to a function which is like defined before button click, or you can say dot set just a second, so it should be add event listener, and then you say click, and then you specify the function. So these are different ways of adding events from JavaScript code instead of HTML. There's one important thing that I also want to talk about, which is cookies. I'm sure you heard about cookies before. So these cookies are persistent storage that the website can store on your device, and it's very useful. It can be it can help the website, for example, save login sessions across save login across different sessions, and make sure that know what pages the person visited, or it can help in tracking. So let's see how you can do tracking using cookies. So let's make a function called get ID, and what this function will return is an ID that will help us uniquely identify one user. So document dot cookie is how we access the cookie, but we want to get an ID. So if we do a for s in document.cookie dot split by because the cookie is a large string that is separated. So a cookie can look something like ID equals 555 and name equals Ahmed, and expires equals some date. So it looks like this. So we want to split it by the semicolon. So then for S, it will give us for the first iteration ID, and then name, and then expires. Now, what we would do then is check the s dot split equals of 0 equals ID. So we want to know if we're in the ID section. So we split it. So in the first iteration, in the first loop, we get ID equals 555, and then we split it by the equal. So we want to know and check the first part if it's equal to ID. If so, then we said we have maybe a global. Actually, yeah, we can just immediately return parse int s dot split equals of 1. So the second part of splitting it by equal. So but if the user is visiting us for the first time, they won't have the cookie. So how do we create a new ID for them? So it's very simple. We just give the user an ID. So let ID equals math.random times 1 million, and math.random gives a floating point number, so we can use math.floor or parse int to convert it to an integer, so it doesn't have a decimal. And then document.cookie, we could set it to ID equals and then plus ID, and then we of course return our ID because the function would give us an ID anyway. So let's remove this string and let's have a look at how this would look on the website. So let's go to look at our cookies. We go to more tools and then web developer tools, which is available on all browsers or most of the browsers. So we go to storage and then we see the cookies. So we have here, I've already made the cookie with the ID, but let's see. But of course, this function doesn't get executed. So let's just make sure that it gets executed. Log get ID. So let's execute it and have a look at whether it will give us the ID or not. So it should return us an ID, but it didn't return a unique ID. So or the ID we already had. So just yeah, it's returning a different ID. So yes, so maybe I'll to save some time, I'll actually copy the code I already have. So yeah, I probably I should have had 4s off. That's the difference. So now we have a cookie that has an ID of 47026. So let's check if it will print 47026. Yes. So every time the user visits our website, our server could know if they can parse the cookie that they have the ID of 47026. So that's something that's very useful with cookies. Let's just delete the cookie and see if it will give us a new ID. And yes, of course, it gave us a new ID. So what this is useful for is tracking a user. So knowing where that a user has visited the website. Again, this can be this is what is used normally for when a user logs into a website. So when a user logs into a website, I store a random ID on their website, and I also store the same ID on the server. And whenever the user creates a request or tries to communicate with the server, the browser automatically sends a cookie. So the server will know that this person is the one that has logged in before. So this is very cookies are a very useful thing, and definitely something that you could potentially use for the project. So yeah, and you can also add an expires to the cookie. So that's something that you may want them to expire after some time, but it's not really a big issue. So don't. Yeah, maybe I'll show you how to do it quickly. It's some very simple code. So you just add like date equals new date, and then you set the date to the get time. which is the current time, and then add the number of milliseconds. So 30. So times 1000. This gives us a number of seconds. You multiply by 60, the number of minutes, the number of hours, multiplied by 24. So you get the number of days, and then you multiply 30. So this cookie should expire in exactly 1 month. And then to say it expired, you give this, and then the day dot it should be 2G empty string. So this should tell us that the cookie will expire after some time. It's a useful feature, but it's not something that is very important. But it's something to keep in mind. Yeah, you can also manipulate CSS from JavaScript. So, for example, it's actually not very difficult. So you can if you want to, for example, modify the background color, so of something. So document dot get element by ID, and then we have an order info, which is this part, and then we want to change its background color. So dot style dot background color. Now, one thing to notice is here we wrote background and then capital C in color. But if we actually go to how we started in CSS, the background color is in order info is written by background dash color. So why is this? Well, it's because variable names in JavaScript can't contain a dash. So what it uses instead is camel case. So in CSS, it uses background dash color, but in JavaScript, we remove the dash and make the letter after it capital. This is something that's important to remember. But anyway, so you said the background color equals, and then let's set it to green, or you can set it to whatever number you want. So this should also be green, and let's see if it will. So yes, so it set it as we can see here. So it set the background color of order info. So we manipulate the CSS by dot style dot background color. If we want to get the CSS of something, we can also use this, but this will not give us the complete CSS. It will only give us the style from the style that we set in the HTML. So if you want to get the actual value of the actual value, use window dot get computed style, and then you write your element, and then if you want a pseudo element, or you write null. So that's how you can manipulate CSS from JavaScript. It's something that you might want when you press a button, some color will change, or yeah, it might be useful. But yeah, I think that's all of the extra concepts I wanted to talk about in JavaScript today. Just trying to give you a quick idea of the stuff you can do in JavaScript, and yeah, it's really nice. And up till now, you can create the website for the project without any problems. We'll introduce today a framework called Vue.js, which is a framework that helps you create the website. It makes it faster, it makes it a bit better. It also introduces some extra complications because you have to learn quite a few things and memorize quite a few things. So it does have its advantages and disadvantages. Today we will talk about as I said, the options model, which is a bit old and is a bit more hard coded compared to the composition model, which I recommend you look at. But to stay consistent with the tutorial website, the lab website, we will use the options model today. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind if you want to understand Vue.js better, or if you want to use it practically, then you probably want to learn the newer model. So let's have a look at how we can enable Node.js in our current project. So the first thing we want to do is go to our index.html. This is not compatible with the Vue SFC model we're using today, so we're going to rename it index no script. So this is the one that doesn't use Vue.js, and the index for the Vue part of the tutorial, we want to rename it to index.html. So yeah, it kind of has replaced all the stuff we wrote up till now, but we'll show you. I'll show you how to recover it later. Then you go to main.js. You will find 4 lines here that you will want to uncomment. Now, those lines, the first one is import the create app function from Vue. The second one it says import app from app.vue, which yeah, isn't very interesting. The most important part is import router from /router. So /router is here, and we have an index.js. We'll look into this in a moment and see what exactly it does. Yeah, so now the Vue should work. Let's have first a look at index no script, what it contains. So sorry, index.html, what it contains. So it doesn't really contain anything interesting, you know, some head that doesn't have much, just use some HTML webpack stuff. But the most, and this no script is executed when we can't execute JavaScript. Yeah, I'm having a small problem here with my installation. So there's this bit of a stupid solution to this. So I hope yes. Just a second. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is because I'm on a virtual machine or what, but we have a I'm running into a bit of a problem. So yes, so but anyway, so ignore this for a moment. So you have here the most important part is a div that has an ID called app. This div is what Vue.js will attach itself to, and it will modify. So it will insert all of its content inside this div. So let's go back to the router. So what does the router do? So it imports home from home.vue. Yeah, it imports some create router stuff, but we don't really care about this for now. So the most important part, it imports home from home.vue and dispatcher from dispatcher.vue. So it goes and imports something called home and something called dispatcher, and then it creates an array of objects called routes. The first one is path, which is a slash, which means just the home page, and then it has a name home, and then uses a component home, which we just imported. And we have path slash dispatcher. Its name will be dispatcher, and it uses a component dispatcher. So what is this useful for? This means that it allows us to create, let's say you want to create something else or another web page. Now you just have 2 web pages, which is home at the path slash and then a dispatcher. So let's say you have another component that you created, you import it, and then you create something called path, and then path new component, and then you add the new component here, and then when you want to access it, you go here. The slash sends you to the home page, or the home page should be empty now. Let's but actually, yeah, npm isn't running, so yeah, it's still installed. But yeah, and when you want to go to dispatcher, this is how you go. And then when you want to visit your new component, you go to the URL you specified here. So this is how you create components, add URLs, which is a very important thing. So this is your router. It's a very important part in your application, and you will be using this if you want to add other web pages. So let's have a look at the single file components in Vue.js and see what they do. So you'll find that they contain three parts: template, script, and style. So if you remember, of course, we studied the first thing, HTML. So templates contains HTML of your website, script contains your JavaScript, and style contains your CSS, of course. So yeah, inside the template, you just write your HTML that you want to put on your website. Inside the script, you can import different stuff from different places, and then you need to do something called export default. Now, this is one of the differences between the options and the composition APIs. So so when you want to do the export default, you create a name. So the default will export an object. It will have a property called name, and then here we're calling it home, which is our home page, and then components, which are the components it uses. In this case, it uses a burger. We'll see exactly what that does. And then it will have something called a data, which is a function and method. So data will be a function it's an anonymous, we created it here as an anonymous function that returns an object that contains an array of objects. So the object contains burgers, which is an array of 3 different objects, which are contain some details about the burgers we have. And then we have a methods, which are methods or that we can call from our HTML. We have here one called get order number and one called add order. So, and then we have our style, which can be our CSS. I'll go. Yeah, yes. So will the CSS be reachable for child components? So I actually haven't tried it, but I guess so. So probably I'll have to try it. So yeah, haven't tried it yet. So yeah, so you have here the. So I don't know whether the CSS would reach child components or not. You could test it out to see. And then, so what this website does. So let's have a look at this website. So it has a div and it says burgers. So it's just, there will be some text on the website saying burgers, and then it has a component called burger. We didn't learn about an HTML tag named burger, of course, and of course the HTML specification probably wouldn't contain a tag called burger. So what exactly is this burger? So if we look here, we'll see that it's using the burger component, and we're importing this burger from components burger.vue. So let's have a look at what this is. So this component is a div that contains 2 weird curly braces with some names. So it has burger.name and burger.kilocalories. And then we have the JavaScript. Now it does export, it only exports a name and it exports props. Now this props is basically the the object that we will pass to it when we're using this. And then we have a style scope. So style scope means that the CSS here will only be limited to this component. It won't be used by the parent of this component. So here we're taking something from the parent called burger, which is an object, and then we are using it here as burger.name, and burger, we're using the properties name and kilocalories from it. But how are we passing the stuff from the parent to this burger? So yeah, I guess it's not very clear, but if you have any questions, you should ask about this Vue.js, because yeah, it's a new way of programming. And yeah, you should also read the text of the lab, because that's, yeah, it could help you understand a bit more. But yeah, so this burger basically describes this burger component, and we are using this v4 burger in burgers, which means that we are having a loop of that go through each burger and burgers, and generating one of these tags. So v4 means we have this loop. We loop over each burger and burgers. Now, what is burgers? It's the data. So it's one of this data. So the data that we're using has to be returned by this function, and for each burger, so it goes through each element in this array. We have 3 elements. It calls it burger, and then we iterate over all of them. We do a v-bind. So this v-bind is burger equals burger. So that's so what it does is it passes the burger variable, which we got from the loop, into the burger which we have in this burger.view. And it also does a v-bind key, which is required when you're doing a loop, and then the key for this would be burger.name. And then we have a div, we give it an ID map, and then v on click it's like on click, but this is for Vue.js. We execute the method add order, and then it has text click me. So we use the ID map to just style it, which isn't very interesting. But then when we execute this, we generate an offset from the event. It's not very interesting. We're just generating an offset, and then we are sending a message via the socket, which is something we talked about last time. We're sending a message to the server with the name add order and with these details. So the order items would be beans and curry, and these will be the details, and then we would get the order number as a random number. So let's look at the website now. It should yeah, maybe I need to run it. Let's look at the website. So it should contain a burger, which is, as we can see here, just a div that contains the name and the number of calories in this burger. So let's see if this is actually what happens. Yes, so, sorry, it's a bit slow. So yeah, it just should. So we'll go through how to modify this website in a moment. But yeah, this is yeah. Yes, so it's loading now. So yes, as we can see, yes, we got the text burgers, which we expected. And then we have a for loop that contains a burger, which is a div. And then it contains the name and the kilocalories. We can actually right click and press inspect, and it will show us that we have this div app, which is, as we said, what Vue.js attaches itself to. And then we have burgers, and then as we said, we have 3 divs. One contains a small burger, which is the name, and then 250. So this burger.name and burger.kilocalorie, if you put them in these curly braces, it will reference those variables, which are obtained from this burger object. It contains the name and kilocalorie property, and which comes from here through this loop. It contains a name and keyboard array, as we can see here. So yeah, it's not the most clear thing. Sorry, but yeah, that's how it works. It's a bit. It's not really the best, the easy thing. So let's actually look at the dispatcher. Okay, how 127. Yes. So let's look at the dispatcher. So we said here when we press this div, it will send something to the server. So what it will send? It will send that an add order message and some stuff, the order ID, the details, and it will say that we are ordering beans and curry. So let's actually look at the server. So what will the server do when it gets this? So this is the old server, not the one we modified. Okay, so what we're doing here is whenever we get a connection, as we said before, this stuff we discussed before, we send the current queue. So what this current queue is, we just send it to whenever a client connects to the server, we send them the current queue. When we get an add order message, which is sorry, in home.view, when we get an add order message, we go to data. So data is some object, and we add this order to it, and then we send to all io.commit, as we said, sends to all the connected clients a message called current queue, and data.get all orders. And then when, yeah, let's ignore this one. So what exactly is data? So data is just a function that creates an object, and then we use here let data equals new data. So this contains an array, an object called orders, and then when we want to add an order, it just goes to the orders object and then indexes it by the order ID and sets it equal to order. So that's what happens here on the server. So when we send an order, as we said, it executes this. It receives a message called add order, and then it executes data.add order, and then sends the current queue to everyone who's connected. Let's see what happens on the dispatcher then. So we have another thing called create. So this function executes, by the way, when the Vue.js is created, and it listens for a message called current queue, and then it modifies it modifies, like uses the data as the argument, and then this dot orders equal that data dot orders. So orders, of course, is a data that is returned by this data function. But let's actually go through the dispatcher. So the dispatcher contains a div that contains the orders, and then another div that is called order list, which is the list, and then we have a loop again, div v4 equals order key in order. So it iterates through orders, and the first thing would be the first item in this object will be called order, and the second object will be called keys, and then vbind key equals order plus key. So it means it will this key is just something that's mandatory for all loops, and it helps us reference this part of the loop later on. So we're just saying, hey, we have this, we're just writing this to the website in the loop, and then that's the main important part. Forget about this for now, but let's actually look at the dispatcher and see whether it's working. So let's click here to add an order. This gets sent to the server. This server sends back the hash, the order, and then we display it using the loop. So whenever we just putting a few new orders. So let's go through it again just to make sure that nobody has missed anything. So when we press the button, when we press the div, it's a div, not a button. It executes the function add order, which generates an offset, and then sends a message called add order to the server with the order ID, with details, and with order items. This message gets received by the server, which, as we said, is server.js, as we said here. So whenever we get a message called add order, we add it to the data, and then we emit a message called current queue to everyone who's connected, saying order and then data.get all orders. So an object which has like one element which is orders, and its value is data.get all orders. Just return this dot orders, and then it gets received by all clients, but the one that's listening actually for this is only the dispatcher, which executes this create current queue, which just updates this dot order, which is of course here, and then we iterate because we use the like v4. It will just iterate, and then this div, because of this v4, and just say, oh, we have like this order key equals order items dot join. So yeah, it's just order items is an array, and then we are just generating a string separated by a comma. So it's not very complicated code. It's but yeah, that's how the website we have works. And of course, clear queue is pretty obvious what it does. So pressing it sends a message called clear queue without any data. Whenever the server receives this clear queue, we just create set data equals new data, and then send the same message, which has all orders and basically just has no orders. So yeah, that's a quick look at Vue.js. Probably not. I understand that probably not everything is very clear now. So yeah, I hope you could catch at least part of it. But if you look at the code yourself, I'm pretty sure you'll understand it. So, and if there's something you can't understand, you can contact me, and I will try to make it as clear as possible. So yeah, that's the code we have. Maybe another thing that we didn't talk about is, so we talked about if you have a div and then you have v4 and then you have a loop. Well, what will happen? It will generate a diff for every iteration of this loop. But if I have something called, let's change it into a paragraph and then vf, what it will do is it will generate this paragraph if this condition is true. So let's say if 1 less than 2, then it will generate a paragraph saying 1 is less than 2. And then let's create another paragraph here saying if 1 is larger than 2. So let's see what will happen. So this is of course on the home web page. Then let's try to refresh and see. So only this one appeared. Only 1 is less than 2. Why? Well, because only this condition is true. So VF basically generates this component only if the condition that's inside is true. So this is another thing you can use in Vue. You can also use variables by using like vbind, and then writing the variable name, which should be maybe condition, and then you write vf and then the condition here. So yeah, that's another thing that I want to talk about, which is vf. Okay, so Yeah, let's actually try to add our burgers now using JSON. So yes, so I actually have two questions. So you can write JavaScript in the I yeah I don't think you can. I've actually yeah you can't write JavaScript here. At least that's from my memory. But yeah, this one less than two is basic JavaScript, but you can't write something complicated. Can you write a function? I'll actually try it out. So let's try return true. Let's try it out ourselves and see whether it will work or not. Let's just remove this. We don't want to use a variable. So let's see if one says return true, and this one says is another function method, and then true. Here we say true. Here say false. So it should only true should appear. But where do we add our functions? We add them in this methods methods object. So one should be return true and then function. So what it should do here is it should just return true, and then we could do return false, and then let's try. So yes, it only it so you could call functions and stuff like this. So it should only have access to the variables that are returned by this data. So yeah, so the variables that you can use inside your HTML are the ones that are returned by this data, and also they are, if you want to modify them in the JavaScript, you want to use this. So for example, you returning burgers, so you can do like this dot burgers if you want to access them from JavaScript. So this is how you access them, and yeah. So and you can also just add whatever code you want, and you can also can you use them in methods? I actually don't remember, but you can definitely use the ones from here, the ones in a return. So yeah, so let's actually try to add our burgers. So I actually created a JSON here that contains our burgers. Let's change this type to name just to make it more consistent. So those are the burgers we actually used from last time, and I want to put them back into our. We want to view them in our Vue website. So how do we do this? So I created this JSON file, which is basically looks exactly like JavaScript. So you have like this opening bracket and closing bracket to create an array, and then you have opening curly braces and closing curly braces to create an object. We have four exactly objects of the exact same type, but just different in values. And then you have a key and a value. Each of them has to be enclosed in quotes if they're strings, of course, but if they're integers, they don't have to be. So yeah, I just created this to save some time, but it's very simple. So let's try to view this in home. So how do we import JSON? So JSON is just plain text. It's like a database, something like a database, or to save some data. So you use import burger list from so where's it's stored in menu.json. So dot slash, and then sorry, another dot slash, and then public, and then menu.json, and then we return burgers. Okay, but we return it to be burger list. So it will return the array from JSON. Now we are looping over each of the burger and burgers, and then doing a vbind, and then like the burger to be burger, and then which is this one, and then the key will be burger.name. If so, that's we're generating basically one of these burgers for each iteration of this loop, but we're just writing burger.name, and of course we don't even have the kilocalories. So let's try to make it look a bit like the website we created before. So let's go to the index noscript.html to so we don't have to write everything again, and let's look at how our burgers look. So we had a wrapper which wrapped around all of our burger divs, and then we had one div for each burger. So let's actually try to copy them. We go here, we go burger.view, okay, and we okay, we fix the indentation. So div and then class, let's call it burger v. And then we have an h3 class of burger name. Don't worry too much about this. So, and then we have an image. So first of all, the burger name, that's very important. We don't want you to have like the burger name for one burger. We want it to be variable. So let's make it again like this, burger.name. And then we will have this image, but we don't want its source to be like this. So how do you get the source again? Burger.image. But of course, since you're using it in an attribute, you have to do this. So it will give you the burger.image. So if you're using it inside the text of the website, you use those double curly braces. If you're using it as an attribute, you use a colon and then burger.image. And then you have a increases fat by, and then fat percent. Yeah, we'll put here burger.fat, and then price again burger.price. Yes, so it sorry, the computer seems to be having a bit of a problem. Actually, yeah, it seems to have completely locked. So that's that's very unfortunate. So it doesn't seem to be responding at all. So yeah, I guess we will have to reset it. Okay, just give me 1 minute until it resets. Sorry about this. It's yeah, sometimes this virtual machine likes to hang a bit, especially when I'm running Firefox. But yeah, we have to run Firefox sadly in this tutorial. So yeah, very sorry about this. So okay, so it here it's restarted. So that's good news. It was quite fast. Okay, let's actually go back to our file, which was in. I don't know. Let's try Chrome. See if Chrome is faster. So yeah, we're lucky it kept most of the stuff. So let's try to. Let's try to run it again. Yeah, so So it should run now. Yes, so as we can see, it likes to do this. So let's just try to show the burger name for now. So let's, yes, this Vue.js really likes to crash without showing any errors or messages. So that can be sometimes a bit frustrating. So yeah, what's the problem? So we modify the, yeah, let's remove this one. Yeah, it's probably because of this, I guess. So let's see. So it should at least, yeah, it's printing the burgers. Yeah, we don't want this for now. So yeah, sorry, I interrupted. I guess it's easy to forget what happened. So we're just trying to view our burgers. Okay, why isn't this? Okay, let's try to at least see. Yeah, so that's kind of working. Okay, so yeah, we're. I hope it's easier now to understand what's happening, that we are. Sorry, so yeah, this is this thing here. So to see what's happening, so I think now it's easier to understand that this loop is iterating over this div, because of course it's an object. It's like an element, a new element we created. Probably I understand that it might not have been the clearest way to explain it, but yeah, it's easier if you read the code yourself. So, and if you have any questions, please ask. So yeah, it views those. Now let's try to style them like we did last time. So we want to at least copy the burger view wrapper and the burger image. Why not? Actually, let's also get the burger info. In fact, okay, let's get all this stuff. So we want to style them from the from here. So we go here, this commented part, because it's, we just care about this. So yeah, and the burger view wrapper. So we just want the burger view, burger image, and we'll take the burger info and burger view wrapper outside to home, because we'll need those in a minute. Let's actually have a look. So yeah, it looks much more like the website we created before, but it still isn't the same. So why? Well, because we're generating the internal divs here. Where did the main website go? So we're generating but we're not working on the wrapper. So let's just copy this part, and just should be one div and one section. Okay, so we should go here to the home. So as we said, our HTML is in the template. So we just do this, and then we have a div, and then we have a section. So we're just copying website from our old data from our old website. So nothing really. Okay, yeah, actually, yeah, this should be like this. So let's see. So I haven't written much new code. It's just everything is being copied from our old website, and I'm sure you can see now how we can add the data. So most of the data you'll just add to this template. Of course, your style will go to in the CSS part. You can still import CSS here from here, by the way. And of course, the JavaScript, the way you write JavaScript is a bit different. But yeah, as you can see, when you wrote this burger here, it's much easier to deal with it like this than to create a new element in JavaScript and then add it. Yes. So how do we know which CSS style is going? Yeah, so So the CSS that I put in burger.view is the one that affects. So here we have burger view, burger image, and fat percent. We're just affecting those elements: burger view, burger image, and fat percent. And the parts that are affecting the main website, we have burger view wrapper and burger info. I put them here. So this is why I put part of them in home and part of them in burger.view. Yeah, it's really easy to just put the extra parts, and so the main advantage here is that if you want to just add a new burger, it's really easy. It's like when you work on the project, you also want to add stuff and remove stuff, and just using it, you can just add it, a new meal, let's call it new meal, and then add fat 50%, for example, I don't know, and then price 500, and then you can just, and then you will immediately just have a new meal, and it will be added immediately. So that's the advantage of using Vue.js. It allows you to be much more flexible, and yeah, it's much more so that you can implement this in JavaScript. You can implement something that reads a JSON using the same import. It's very easy, but then you would have to iterate through each element manually, and then you'd have to create a new div for each of them, and you would have to create a new image and so on. But here, and once you do it in Vue.js, you just write HTML. It's just so much easier, in my opinion. So that's the advantage. But of course, you can also do it in plain JavaScript. You can use another framework if you want, and so on. So yeah, and the forms, of course, would be just like a change to a V model approach. But yeah, it's like, yeah, using like the bindings. So you would have something called, I'll show you in a minute how we can do the forms. So I'll also add the forms, and try to add the forms here, just to make sure that it's okay. So let's just go here and try to add the form, which is the order info. And yeah, I'll probably just set one element. So actually, it should just be this section. So yeah, so you go here, you copy this, you put it in home.view, and then let's put it here, and then let's not worry too much, but we can create a variable called I don't know, maybe username, and then bind it to a variable called uname, and of course this. Okay, and no, it's, yeah, okay, this should work. No, it's giving. Okay, so username, let's just say it's empty for now, and then we bind it to a username here. So what we do is replace name with v by v model is username. So what happens here is we're just binding this variable to this text field, and then let's actually create something called a paragraph, and then say v bind equals username, and then username. We just want in this paragraph to be just the username. So let's try this out, and hopefully it will. Yes, so in line 16. Okay, that's, yeah, guess we created two different paragraphs. No, yeah, it's still not working. Okay, just a second, sorry. let's just create a div here. So let's try it again. Okay, that's yeah, I guess you can put a div inside a paragraph. That's the problem. So yeah, let's try it. Yes, so we have here a name, and then you have like just a second, it's missing something. I'll okay, yeah. So yeah, it's easy to. I'll just copy the code I already prepared. So yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about this. It's can be a bit tedious to get this stuff to work. I guess it's easy to tell that I'm not a big fan of this this framework. So let's remove this. So I will return your variable. So I'll explain what this does in a minute. So we're adding a variable to our data called your variable, and you have an input type equals text, and then v model equals your variable. So we bind the variable called your variable to this input text, and then we just add this to a div here. Put this variable inside a div, which should be at the bottom of our website, and then as you can see, it's just we can directly read the data from this variable. So we bind this variable to this text. So whenever we modify this text, this variable gets modified, and then we are reading it here. So that's how we get this to work. So yeah, it's a bit of a tedious framework in my opinion, but yeah, that's what we are going to explain here. So sorry about that. So yeah, sorry for the delay here. Does anyone have any questions then about this tutorial or about what we explained today? So I guess nobody seems to have questions. So yeah, I guess you should start working on your project, and you should start working on your code. You should use this code as a base to work on later on. So you should it will make your life a bit easier. Or if you just want to start something new and just write JavaScript by yourself, you can also do it. So it's a bit hard to tell where exactly to start on the project. I guess you could start working, for example, on the organizer view. It's a bit easier, and try to create a view for the organizer using this using your using the HTML and stuff, like the one. I mean, you should have designed it already using paper or using some Photoshop or other designer tool and submitted it previously in the project. So now you could start implementing it using HTML and CSS, and yeah, try to make that design the organizer view work. And if you get stuck on something, please send me a message, and I will do my best to work on it, or we can meet if you on Zoom if you want, or if it's a more detailed question. So I guess thank you very much for being here today to the last tutorial. And yeah, I will remind you, I will still be in this course. I will be there to help you with the project, and I will also be yeah so hopefully you will do well. And if you have any questions, please contact me later on. And thank you very much for being here today. And I will hopefully you do well in the project. So I guess this is the end. I end the recording now.